Well, facing resistance from Republicans on Capitol Hill, President Trump may be backing away from his threat to shut down parts of the federal government.
KCRA 3 political analyst and senior vice president of Randall Communications, Kevin Riggs, is joining us now with the Riggs Report. So why are we starting to hear this change of heart?
Well, certainly.
If that's what it is.
Well, it sounds like it anyway. You have to sort of guess and sort of read between the lines. But certainly Republicans in Washington have told the president that they are not thinking it's a good idea to shut down the government. In fact, they've prepared legislation that would at least temporarily provide money for portions of the government for the next few months, and a vote on that could come as soon as today. So what has changed, to your question? Well, as we know, last week, the president said he would be proud to shut down the government if he doesn't get the $5 billion he says he wants for that border wall of Mexico. Yesterday, the White House changed its story pretty substantially, a spokesperson saying they don't want to shut down the government after all, but might be open to a different deal for border wall funding. That could be, for example, diverting money from existing programs instead of a new appropriation. But frankly, the details of any new deal are still murky, and that's a source of, I think, bipartisan frustration as we get closer to that shutdown deadline this weekend.
Kind of hard to believe. Governor Brown in his final weeks in office now. He was speaking to the press club yesterday of Sacramento. Did he talk much about his legacy?
Well, you know, it's interesting. He is a historic figure by virtue of the fact that he's the only California governor to have ever served 4 full terms, but he professes not to like questions about legacy, even though most politicians would be pleased to answer that under the theory that it's better to define yourself than to let others do it for you. Nonetheless, he deferred questions about his accomplishments yesterday, saying that he is looking forward, not backwards, as he and his wife Ann prepare to move to their ranch in Colusa. He also told the press club yesterday he wasn't there to make news. For example, he declined to answer questions about whether he is thinking about commuting sentences of any inmates on California's death row between now and the time he leaves office on January 7th, when Gavin Newsom is sworn into office.
But he did go ahead and weigh in on the Texas court ruling that does threaten the Affordable Care Act. And does he think that that law will survive?
Well, and California, as you know, has such a huge stake in the outcome of that fight, because right now you've got roughly 1 in 3 Californians enrolled in Medi-Cal, and that's largely a result of expansion that was made possible through the Affordable Care Act. So the governor said yesterday that he believes that the law will be upheld, even though if it does go back to the Supreme Court, obviously it's a much more conservative court than the last time they considered the ACA. So he is saying that it's probably going to be surviving, but he said if it does not, he predicted that it would be a huge downfall for the Republicans in 2020, a big backlash that would cost them dearly at the White House level as well as the congressional level.
Can I give you a blog topic this week? Not that you need one, I'm sure.
I would love your suggestion.
I would love you to write about what it's like covering Governor Brown behind the scenes. I think that would be really fun for people to find out what it's actually like there.
I would be happy to do that. And think about this. Let me leave you with this thought. He was governor when I graduated from college.
How about that? That's how good he is. Kevin does write a political blog. Apparently, I just assigned it. And tomorrow's Riggs Report, we'll post at midnight. You can find out what Kevin comes up with by going to our KCRA News app.